And welcome to Inside Albania with me, Alice Taylor. This week we're going to be talking about two rather controversial topics, prostitution and sworn virgins, not at the same time. Now, over the years, there's been a lot of debate in Albania about whether prostitution should be legalised or decriminalised. There are large, very conservative parts of society which say, no, absolutely not, and more liberal-leaning sides that say, yes, we should be looking at other ways to regulate the profession. Recently, the director of the School of Magistrates, Arba Rakipi, said it is time to look at the Italian or the French model when it comes to regulating prostitution. I am joined today by Savim Arbana in the studio, who is a local women's rights activist, and Valerie Tender, a survivor of prostitution who was a prostitute from the age of 16 to 23 and is now an advocate for what she believes is the right way to regulate. Valerie, thank you for joining me, especially with the really awkward time difference between us. I appreciate you taking the time to give us your perspective. Let's start at the beginning for the benefit of our viewers, and Savim, who is joining me in the studio here. Tell me your story. You became a prostitute at the age of 16. How did that happen?
So I like to say that I was prostituted by men, that it's something that was done to me. And it's not an identity, like I wasn't a prostitute myself. It's something that was done to me. And I think there was a lot of prior grooming that I only was able to understand after I got out. But basically, since the age of 5, my father exposed me to pornography. I also knew that my father had worked for the mafia in Montreal family. He had worked in strip joints. So basically, I had this image that everything about my father's previous life before he married my mom was super cool. He had been around the world. And in his night table next to his bed, he had all these fake dollar bills from the Amsterdam red light. And at work, when you opened his locker, he had all these pictures of naked women. So like it was everywhere. So there was a lot of grooming, but I was only able to understand that years later. I asked myself when I entered therapy at 23, when I needed to get out of it, was why did I fall into it so easily? Why did I know what to do? Why was I so detached and professional? Like, it's not normal at 16 when a man offers you money for sex that right away you feel like, yeah, I know what to do. I'm in control. Like, it's crazy. So the year of when I was 16 years old is when I accepted to do the first client. And it was actually in my hometown, a small logging town way up north in the province of Quebec. And then from that, I made enough money to run away towards Montreal, the bigger city. And I was quickly caught up in the sex trade because I started bartending at 17 in a strip club, knowing very well that and I think another factor that really predisposed me was that in school, I was like a chubby glasses and I didn't feel attractive. I was kind of too gifted also intellectually, where I was interested in more adult themes, and I never went to kindergarten. So I wasn't socialized with other children. I tended to want to talk with adults. And at 11 years old, I wanted to be an archaeologist, and I love ecology. And so my topics of interest had nothing to do with the other kids my age. And so when I ended up in Montreal, I settled right downtown. I got an apartment above a club that was the first fetish club in Montreal. At the time, I would have said, I'm cool, I'm proud. I would have even looked at regular women and say, oh, you could never do what I do. And it's crazy the things that we tell ourselves. And then throughout the 6 years that I was in the sex trade, I talk about a sex industry and a sex trade because it is structured as an industry. And I can explain that later, but basically it's nothing to say of the women who do it. It's something to say about the men who coerce us with money to get access to us sexually, when I think that sexuality should not be something that you can bargain. For the same reason that we're not supposed to sell organs or ovum and sperm and, blood. And those things that should be considered Yes.
Is this why you don't want to use the word, you refuse to use the word sex worker, especially to describe yourself? And you're very rightly so particular about the way that you describe your experience and what you used to do, because it's not a job. It's not something that we should be pushing as sort of a life choice.
Of course, first of all, as soon as we say sex work, by the way, this term was coined the pimp lobby, the American pimp lobby, and I believe the 70s or 80s. So this term didn't come out of women themselves. It was something made to brand it as very cool, as very legitimate. And as soon as you say sex work, you've just pushed two different lies by not, you kind of bypass thinking about it. When you say sex, I'm sorry, but if sexuality is to put your own desire on hold in order to service someone, I don't think that sex. And there's no other work that happens in people's orifices where there's contact with mucous membrane and body fluids. Any profession that requires contact with body fluids is always done in order to save lives, and it's always done with equipment. So it's just the whole, if you try, I did the extensive exercise one day to like sit down and try to make labor law fit onto the sex industry. It's just impossible. It's dehumanizing, and then it calls for dissociation, because for women, I always talk about women because the majority of exploited people are women, but obviously young gay men or even heterosexual young men who run away, or trans-identified people, I feel like they all get exploited the same way women get exploited. Like men demean us in a very gendered way in the sex trade. They inferiorize us. They push us into a sexuality of service. So what I was saying is that basically, all of the way I think today is because I've been out of this exploitation for 20 years. Another thing about why I don't like to call it sex work is because it's kind of tricky. When you're in it, you need to tell yourself things in order to do it. You need to have a reason to say, I'm a sex worker, I'm proud. And I used to, for 6 years, I would have defended it. I would have said it's my choice.
It's
blah, blah,
empowering.
blah. But neoliberal discourse will bring no explanation once those reasoning don't help you anymore. You start having autoimmune condition, you're in pain, you have invisible pain. You no longer dissociate as freely in and out of it as you used to be able to in the beginning. It starts to catch up with you. And when it starts to catch up with you and you experience it as exploitation of something precious of yourself that should not be exploited, then the whole sex work is work. That will not be helpful. It will not bring you any explanation about how you feel now, about how damaged you are. It damages your relationship with men, with money, with family, with your own worth, with your own intelligence, because you are called to use only very specific traits. What I like to say about prostitution is when we try to say we should legalize, I'm fully on the position that we have to decriminalize prostituted people,
Yes,
but not the client.
Yes. It's my view that no woman given a real choice of an actual job, a real job, would ever choose prostitution. And if they did, I believe that those few who might actually genuinely choose it would regret it later in life. And if they don't, I believe they have some serious trauma or other problem going on, which has led them to believe, to disassociate to the point that they think it's okay. In short, I do not believe that any woman in her right, true, honest mind would sell her body, whether it's online, for porn, or for sex. I just cannot believe that anyone, and when these people say, oh yes, but it's empowering, it's my choice, I'm proud of it, look how rich I am, I would like to talk to them in 10, 15, 20 years and after they've had a lot of therapy. That's my view. I have to ask you, so sure. We connected over...
I need to surf on that. I just quickly need to surf on that. I obviously agree with everything you said, but because I always keep in mind sorority and to be non-judgmental, I like to take the example of, for example, a woman who's currently caught in a conjugal violence situation. She doesn't have the distance to be able to look at her situation. When you're in it, you defend it.
Of course.
When you need to have certain reasoning. So I try to not judge women in the here and now, but we obviously us who have been out for a long time.
No, I guess I wasn't, when I said, about choice, I wasn't being judgmental. I was sort of saying, literally they maybe do not have a choice to do it. They are being forced or coerced or have been groomed. But then there are some who think they are making a choice and, it's motivated by money, or they think it's cool because they've seen girls on Instagram or whatever. I meant choice in a sort of broader way rather than being judgmental.
We don't live in a vacuum. I agree with you. Yes, we don't live in a vacuum. We live in a society that feeds us these codes and messages, which brings us back to my upbringing.
Yes.
That led me to be able to think that way.
You're desensitized.
Sometimes I feel like we act as if we don't know anything about prostitution, and we do know things. There are amazing researchers. There's Melissa Farley. There's the German psychotraumatologist Ingeborg Kraus, who have really important data on not only predisposing factors, but the consequences on the women. So we have objective data that most of the women have endured, sexual trauma prior to entering, and will suffer very expectable consequences of the sex trade in their bodies. She's not sleeping with him. So it's poverty. The main reason is poverty.
Mm-hmm. I have a weird question, and forgive me for asking. What, in your view, when you were working in those 6 years, just so people can understand how traumatic this would be, do you have an average number of clients you might have in a day or a maximum? Because I think it's difficult for people to really gauge how mechanical you have to be to deal with this sort of thing every day.
Back then, I would have said I worked on the streets. I worked in clubs, in brothels, in strip clubs, all sorts of different venues, going to clients' house, doing it in cars. I've done it all, except porn, because there was a part of me that didn't want to leave a trace. Mm-hmm. It would have been impossible to catch me without knowing. So fortunately, I was before internet and before small cameras. Mm-hmm. But I have never had more clients and had to dissociate them more than when I was physically parked into where I had from 8 to 12 to up to 15 men a night. So that is what legalization will bring. It brings a woman that is physically parked into a location that has this conveyor belt of men. And then the very action of the work itself is to be sexually harassable. Of course. You are in a place for 8 hours or more a day, and you are there to be sexually harassable, which is any labor law, right? Mm-hmm. And then clients choose you. And at some point, they don't choose you. And another number I find interesting, aside from how many clients I had to endure in my body every night, and when you're in this line of occupation, you end up doing it 5-6 nights a week. Because I checked one day on a website that listed all the different clubs in the Montreal and Ontario area, and I did about 25 of them in 6 years. This also says something important about how we need to be fresh meat everywhere. So we need to change club all the time. The more experience you have, the less you get paid, the less valuable, the less promotion you get. In this line of work, you are never worth more than when it's your first time and you're naive. And as more as you get professional about it, so detached and dissociated, then you can't take as well, and then you're not worth as much, and you need to try to get the new client. When you change employer 25 times.
Albania is looking at legalizing, decriminalizing. Let's see. They've looked at the French model and the Italian model. This is what has been said in the media so far. So the government want to look at decriminalizing, regulating. A large portion of society does not want it legalized or decriminalized because they are very conservative. And then we have a very liberal sort of civil society movement, which is very feminist. They're leaning on sort of feminist perspectives. I guess from you, with your experience, what advice would you give to policymakers in Albania now as they are looking at decriminalizing or legalizing prostitution?
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Alice. I appreciate you wouldn't believe. All right, I've been looking at what's going on in Albania, just as I'm looking at what's going on in Scotland. And now, I'm going to get back to saying something very important. It's something that happens to women in our bodies. As soon as you from that and you start being in a very intellectual, sanitized realm of ideas, you get away from the reality that prostitution is day in, day out penetration in your body. That is what prostitution is. So let me talk about the different political models that you can have about prostitution. You can either make everything illegal, which is called prohibitionism, or you can make everything legal, which has government oversight. Or you can do the same thing, but call it full decriminalization, where it's the same thing as legal, but with less government oversight. And the people who claim that will say that New Zealand is a role model. New Zealand is a disaster for women. There's no oversight. The cops never visit the brothels. The women are left to themselves. If you're a prostituted person in Germany, which, by the way, the overwhelming majority of prostituted women in Germany are not German, okay? They're trafficked from other locations. Hello. And the vast majority of women trafficked to the UK right now are Albanian women.
Yeah.
So you guys on site already have a problem with trafficking network. If you legalize, you're going to create a class of businessmen out of your current traffickers. And you're also going to these venues for men to go and empty themselves. And we, as much as we act as if we don't know about what brings women to prostitution, we act as if we don't know what clients are and what they want. The majority of clients, about half of them, is house. So this means it's like legitimate elements of women's bodies. And then what they want to do to prostituted women is what their wife refused to do. So can you imagine the degradation that the women have to endure? And I will not get too graphic on your show, but all the violent acts and porn is what is being asked of prostituted women. This is what the menu in German brothel looks like. You can ask for, and I will.
No, don't. What should the Albanian government do? What should their approach be? So I've been reading some documentation coming out of Albania, and I've been disappointed that they kind of just overlook the Nordic model as if it's not a real legitimate third option. So they seem to think like it's either everything is illegal or everything is legal. No, there is a third option. Yeah. And this third option is amazing. And it's been endorsed by countries like France, Norway, Sweden, Canada, even Israel. And currently Scotland is looking at it as well. This approach completely decriminalizes the women in prostitution, but and pimps makes it that it's not a job. And it has to come with resources and services to help the women get out. It has to come with, even in Canada, we have not yet had campaign. As much as 20 years ago, we had campaign against drinking and driving, where you had all these publicities on TV and radio. Well, to this day in Canada, even though we have the Nordic model, we still haven't had these campaigns that say, worried because Albania is not meeting its mark on gender equality at the moment. You already have in your beautiful country legitimate problems based in culture, rooted in real old-time oppression of men and women. And you want to give them that on top. You want to say, by the way, go and buy women as you want. And you think they're not going to rape more? You think they're not going to beat their wives more? Yes.
And it breaks my heart from the accounts I've heard of Albania is that when women are trafficked and they try to go back to their family, they're not accepted back in their family because it's very much a culture of shame.
Yes.
This breaks my heart. We are victims. We need to stop organizing male sexual outlets. That is my core message. Stop organizing male sexual outlets.
Valerie, thank you very much for your insight and for sharing your personal story with us. It's extremely valuable.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Savine, what did you think to hear such a story firsthand?
I listened to her story. It's a very sad story because her life story. And if you listen to different women's prostitute stories, there are so many differences, but at the end, they are victims of it, even that are working. I can raise two questions regarding to the lady's stories. First of all, how she called, did she call prostitution sexual workers or not? Because I was
no,
not,
she refuses.
Yes, she refuses to call. But how?
She doesn't call herself a prostitute, and she refuses the word sex worker. Yeah. She says that she was prostituted because it's not a real choice.
Yeah.
And she refuses the word sex worker because it's not a job. She doesn't believe that it's a job, and that this word, which came from men, has been used to try.
I understood because now is a public debate or the definition of the prostitution has been and is sex workers. We used to, like activists, we call sex workers because we don't have any other definition when they are not trafficked or pushed in prostitution by others. So this is my question, first question. And the second question is because she was very, many complexity in her stories. How we can discuss today about Albanian prostitution? Because now we need to be oriented by different models, Nordic, French, Italian. But I think we need to build Albanian models because otherwise we will have many problems. Because as she mentioned, it was very clever when if we decriminalize, we can build a strong business men that are looking for this business.
Yes, they will take advantage, monopolize.
Yeah, they take advantage. We'll create another image in society. We can push women more in these sex workers or prostitution. So this is a dangerous. But how we can, with these big contracts in Albanian society, where patriarchalism is dressed with other dress, modern dress. But if you take off these dresses, there are still these men, this society, very patriarchal. Yeah.
For me, I think the best thing to do is to decriminalize it for women. So if you are a woman and you sell sex...
Dutch Nordic model.
Yeah, the Nordic model. So to sell sex, to be a prostitute is not illegal. This way, if you are forced into being a prostitute, if you are coerced, even if it's not trafficking, but you are like she was groomed and she was pushed into it. If you want to get out of it, if you need help afterwards, if you have to report...
the law protects
if someone rapes you and you want to report it, you are not... Because now, if you are a prostitute in Albania and you are raped or assaulted or they steal your money, you can't go to the police.
Now
you can't go and say, oh, they say,
condemn both.
Yes. So this, I think, needs to be decriminalized to protect the women.
I think
I think it should be illegal to buy sex from a woman or a man. It should be illegal to buy sex. It should be illegal to have a brothel. It should be illegal to run an escort agency. It should be illegal to have a strip club where you can buy sex. I think everything which facilitates the sale of sex as a third party should be completely illegal with high penalties, not just fines, but prison sentences and a criminal record.
I think that for this penal code about prostitution is open in public debate, and with time we'll take the measures to fix it, I think.
What do you think? Because I've read from some feminists in Albania who've written their opinions on this, that sex work is real work, it's empowering, it's the women's choice, we should let women choose what to do with their bodies. Do you think having sex for money is empowering for a woman?
No, absolutely no. It's surviving, I mean. If you don't have any... But I believe, regarding my long experience in this field, because since 1997 we started to work in this field. We produced the first survey in Albania, Prostitution, the Society in Dilemma, where we identified 4 groups of women, prostitutes, very common, very poor young ladies that prostitute in Bridge of Lana, in the street for 1,000 lek. And the last group, like escorts or courtesans, we called in high hotels and so on. But no one from this make with their choice. Only these young lady students who run for money, look for rich men, or look to have high expensive things for dresses, houses, cars, etc. Only this group. But the rest, they never do it, they decide. They never look to empower themselves with this. Even the girls who have been trafficked in Italy after they build their own business in sex workers, But nobody was, if you listen different stories of prostitutes, they are the same. They are the same.
I think if you say
like a feminist, I never believed that this profession, sex workers, empower women. Never. They humiliate. Because you are very fragile in your body as well. You are humiliated in your personality, mentally, physically. So doesn't link with health and personality and empowering. Never, never.
I think even those women who have been very successful, either as porn stars earning millions of pounds, or
they're mentally
these
problems.
Women, you said, you know, in Italy, they've gone and run big businesses. I bet you if you sat them down and you said, I'm going to give you a choice, you can have the same amount of money, either working in sex or as a lawyer, journalist, artist, sports person, whatever. I guarantee that almost all of them would choose a different path.
Absolutely. They look for fast money. But if, as you mentioned, if you offer something the same money, no women can do this. No.
Do you think Albania is ready? Because Albania is very conservative. Lots of the public will say it shouldn't be decriminalized for women, blah, blah, blah. Do you think we're ready to take this step to decriminalize, to protect women?
Yes, I think, because there is one problem. This discussion started almost 30 years ago, because Albania changed worldview after 90. It was not anymore Albania as before 90. So if the problem exists, these problems exist. Now we need to resolve this problem with legal measures. Absolutely. This is time, and it's a long time that we do the same discussion. But how to do, in which direction, Italian, French, this is another thing. But I believe, and I strongly say that we must create a model by Albanian law. And measures can take slowly after a different and strong debate in public with many interest groups, because there are, but firstly with women, firstly with young generation, because they are target to be trafficked, to be invited in this profitable sector. So we need to do this discussion, but legal measure can be taken slowly with some trainings, recommendation from EU as well. I don't know, but I think that we need to see the Albanian circumstances and all.
Because it's getting worse. I mean, there are openly places walking around the centre of Tirana where you can buy sex. It may not have sex for sale outside, but you can tell that it's a certain kind of massage parlour or bar where you can buy it. You can go into fancy hotels in Tirana and you can see women who you can tell.
Underground, you can see everything
and
underground,
it's in the news.
You can imagine. But if you write, for example, can we open in middle of Tirana or in Durrës, Vlora, blah, blah, red windows, brand? Never.
No, it shouldn't happen.
Never. With Albanians, never.
I think
if other women from other young girls from other countries come, as happened now.
It's happening. They're being trafficked.
It's happening in every local, even in Kosovo. There are many foreigners, young girls. We work in nightclubs, striptease, and but their stories are very sad as well.
But my idea
they are kidnapped. They are treated very badly.
My idea is that if you decriminalize it for women and criminalize it for the men buying it, this is not to encourage prostitution, that this would stop it, that we would reduce the number.
Because men will be very
have to
careful.
be punished, because it is mainly men buying it. They're the ones that have to face the consequences for it.
For this, we need to, and this is the main goal of new penal code, to discuss and to see which is. But definitely, we need to change the penal code. Can be and is increase the punishment for trafficking, for
and to actually prosecute them properly as well. Right, our next topic, controversial as well, gender equality in Albania. There's been a debate on social media over the last week or so and in some other TV studios about transgenderism, about gender equality, and whether the concept of sworn virgins, burrneshat, are linked to gender ideology. I'm joined online by Antonia Young. Antonia Young is an anthropologist. She is a lecturer. She has a huge interest in Albania, and she wrote a very good book about Albania, Women Who Become Men, Albanian Sworn Virgins. This was written several years ago. She researched, she interviewed and met with sworn virgins, and I am speaking to her today to find out a bit more about the phenomenon. Antonia, my friend, welcome to Inside Albania. I'm so happy I finally managed to get to you on the show for an interview.
Yes, this is terrific. Wonderful.
The reason I brought you here today is there's been a bit of a debate recently. There's an ongoing debate in Albania about gender and, similar to what's going on in the rest of the world. But there was an interesting debate last week in the media. And this was whether sworn virgins could be considered as part of the trans community or as part of this sort of gender fluidity, and whether it's to do with the concept of gender being a construct. And you are probably one of the best people to speak to about this. You're an anthropologist. You've written a fantastic book about sworn virgins. So I want to ask you, in the beginning, how did you come across the idea, the knowledge, the existence of sworn virgins in Albania? And then what prompted you to write a book about them? Well,
my interest was aroused, firstly, in being interested in Albania itself. This is a result of my having grown up in Western Europe, where Eastern Europe didn't exist. And my discovery of Eastern Europe was very exciting to me. And I spent a lot of time in Yugoslavia. And then I wanted to go further, and I finally made it into Albania in 1989. Wow. And it was only after I'd been there that I read up a lot more about Albania. And of course, Edith Durham's books are widely known and available. And I think that was my spur. And then, as I've explained in my book, I was also based in America for a while, where Rose Wilder Lane was quite well known. Mm-hmm. And I found sort of the link between the two of them, and that was absolutely fascinating. And I felt I needed to follow this through and see, particularly on this aspect of sworn virgins that hadn't been taken up anywhere else, as far as I could see, not recently at that time.
So during the process of you researching for this book, you met with sworn virgins, you did a lot of research. What is your understanding of this phenomenon? Like, why was it necessary? How did it occur?
Well, there seem to be two basic needs. One was for a woman who didn't want to marry somebody that she was betrothed to. Her only way out was to become a man. That was one. Although that was not what I found. I didn't find anybody who had experienced that. Mm-hmm. The other was where a family was left without a man in the household, and either they would be taken in by relatives, or brothers or uncles, or otherwise there was this alternative that they could become a man and lead and head their own household. So that was the phenomenon that I found still existed, and I did find such.
When you say become a man, I mean, I think in 2025, that has a different sort of meaning to what we probably mean when we talk about a sworn virgin. It would be that they would take on the social role and the physical appearance of a man, but without feeling like a man inside, I guess.
Yes, that's absolutely so. And the pictures that I've seen in the previous books, where they were all dressed in traditional men's clothes, which was very clearly defined, much more than today's clothing.
How many sworn virgins did you meet as a part of the process of writing the book?
I think it was at least 11.
Wow.
And there were others that I was hoping to meet and didn't. And I've heard of more since. Mm-hmm. But I think the whole tradition has so much changed that where it was in the process of changing as I was doing my research. The older ones were definitely keeping to the old traditions, but the more modern ones were holding on to this as a way of being more independent, having independent lives.
It's actually, that's interesting. I met Justina, one of the last remaining sworn virgins in Lapusha, and she said this to me exactly. You know, she did it out of duty because it was the situation that her family were in, but also she enjoyed, although she did kind of have some regrets, she said to me, you know, I could go out for a coffee, I could smoke, I could drink raki, I could say what I wanted, I could go where I wanted. You know, it was a sense of freedom that she just absolutely would not have had as a woman in that time, in that part of northern Albania. I want to ask your opinion as well, based on your knowledge, when people recently have tried to compare being a burrnesha to the idea of transgenderism, how do you feel about that? Do you think burrnesha is cultural and societal, or do you think it does dovetail in some way with this concept of gender ideology and transgenderism?
I feel it's something completely different and rather alien, really. I would think those who are transgender would not approve of the behaviour of burrnesha, their reasoning anyway. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's because the burrnesha are supporting the patriarchal system, whereas transgender people are branching out on their own, separately.
Mm-hmm. The fact that this tradition is dying out, do you feel that it's a loss, or do you think it's something that should be preserved, remembered, or continued? What are your feelings on that?
That's a strange question, yeah. Well, I guess life has to move on, doesn't it? I think we have to accept things change, and we have to go along with changes as they come. I don't think it isn't quite appropriate anymore the way it was before. Mm-hmm. So hopefully there'll be more equality between sexes, so that necessity is lessened. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Actually, just before you came, we were talking about the Albanian government's idea to legalize or decriminalize prostitution in Albania. And I just wanted to ask, because you have worked and spoken to people who have been trafficked in and from Albania, who have been forced into sex work. And I just wanted to ask you, when you hear this, you know, Albania might regulate the sex industry, it might decriminalize it. What thought does that give you?
Well, it could open up a can of worms, giving those who are already making huge amounts of money more ability to do it. I mean, it would have to be done so very, very carefully and ensure that the laws were really properly.
So I favour decriminalising it for women, the women involved completely, but criminalising it for people buying sex or running brothels or facilitating pimping in some way. That's the approach that I favour.
Premises.
Right. Well, if it could be done, but seeing how ineffective the laws are in Albania, it's hard to imagine that this would actually work. It's difficult enough even in the Netherlands, where they've worked on this for centuries. And I think everything has happened so fast in Albania. We kind of expect it to be able to live up to present day how we in the West live, and things can't change that fast. Mm-hmm. We have to make sure that the laws are followed. That's the first thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not run before we can walk.
Yeah.
Antonia, thank you very much.
Thank you, Alice. Thank you.
Savim, what do you think? Can burrnesha be included within the idea of transgenderism?
No, I guess not. Because as the ladies, who is very well-known ethnographs, but also for us, it's very well known that burrneshat exists in Albania and are products of cultural, financial mentality of area. And they are spread in North Albania, in Kosovo, Montenegro, and Puka, Shkodra, no Shkodra, Puka, Kukës, burrneshat. And they exist for different circumstances of family. They are produced of family decision, mainly. Sometimes when they don't have a boy in the family, or when the boy died or father died, they give the role of men, leaders to the family, girl. Or there are some cases of burrneshat when they decided not to marry by themselves. Yes. And nobody knows what they prefer, what kind of sex, but definitely they are not transgender. They are not transgender. Swore girl or swore.
I think we could say
virgins.
Maybe in the history of Albania there have been some sworn virgins who are trans.
Maybe.
But that doesn't mean that all of them are.
Beginning of till 1930, 1940, there are many cases in my husband's family. For example, they come from very rich family in villages, Bel Air. And it was a girl from a very rich family, but with 5 brothers. They decided to marry 3 times. She didn't accept. And then she killed herself.
Wow.
And for sure, she has other preferences. Who knows? But nobody talk about this.
Yes.
In Albania, nobody talk about sexual preferences. Nobody. Later, till 90, after 90, started to talk. In 2000, when we started to talk a little bit about LGBT, and I am in from the first group in Albania that supported in 2009 this small group of LGBT in Albania, and they looks like criminals everywhere. So before, can you imagine before?
Yes.
But
we had Edith Duram. She wrote that in the highlands, male shepherds would go off for months at a time, and they had same-sex relationships, and it was accepted. It wasn't talked about so much.
This is very old, since in the Rome.
No, I mean, people say, even in the time of Edith Duram, it was happening.
But, before.
People are saying, oh, this is a new thing, people want to bring it to Albania, but it's not the case.
The problem exists with people every time, all this time.
While it has existed historically, LGBT people in Albania, I do think it maybe was a bit of a mistake to compare burrneshat with gender ideology and trans.
Let's bring an example, for example, because I was surprised when I read the history of the last burrneshat, because there are very few now in all Balkan. The experts tell that are not more than 40 in general, has been 102 in all this region. Now 40, but Ilmia, the history of burrneshat Ilmia, she's 47 years old. She's very young. And to be transgender, it's her choice to declare. Nobody can judge her. But she's real burrneshat. She chose to be burrneshat. And when I read the story, I was really... how come? Because she's very young. She born in 80. Can you imagine a burrneshat? But she took this decision by herself to lead the family, to work like a man, to make some financial profiting, because the area where you come from, it's like now, for example, it's like a protest against all circumstances, people that...
the expectations of women.
Because there are some women that are stronger than some other women. And we called in our concept of burrneshat in Albania, many people told me, you are burrnesh for me.
Yeah, I think
because when you are strong, I am not strong at all, but if you have your voice, you speak out with freedom, and they said burrneshat. So it's something completely different, burrnesha, from transgender, I guess.
Yes, I've been called burrnesha as well, and my friend Jutta, she as well, burrnesha, because we are, you know.
All women who do many things for themselves with their efforts and courage and work, they call burrnesha, because this has been the story of burrnesha.
Sevim, thank you very much for joining me.
I listened to interesting stories.
It was very interesting.
Very interesting.
And now, in the summer, I was in Lepusha and I was hiking. I was there filming a documentary, but at that exact moment in time, I wasn't expecting to be working. And I was hiking through the countryside and I came across Justina, who is one of the 3 remaining burrnesha in Albania.
Yeah.
And of course, I asked her, can I have an interview, please? I can't miss that kind of opportunity. It was like fate meeting in the middle of the countryside. And she said yes. Here's what happened.
Përshëndetje, edhe faleminderit për kohë edhe më fal për qetësyse.
Jo, unë jam shumë e kënaqur për interviste për shumë gjëra për njerëz që vinë prej jashtë me kënaqësi, ata ka di.
Po ti ka historinë shumë interesante, Justina.
Po, historia ime është shumë interesante se adin përpara na kanë edhe vetë sistemi, sistemi komunist, si pa jena kanë shumë varfën, shumë varfën. Edhe atë nana ishte me fëmijë shumë.
Sa?
Na ishim 6. Edhe baba ka vdekiri, baba ka vdekiri.
Po.
Atë na kam nej për me nimua familjen, për me rritë vllaznit, motrat, për me agon një dorë non-stemme. Nuk e di që donë me një intervjist në gjangë kështu, nuk e di që donë me bane, i pyjtë bështë të bane kështu.
Për të gjithë, do me thonë, mama jote rritë gjithë femi vetë.
Po, na jina kanë 4 motra edhe 2 vllazën.
Po, edhe pastaj ti është si burrnesha.
Po, unë jam burrnesha,
Po, sepse intervista është edhe për njerëz e huaj, sepse do të bëjnë një titër anglisht, edhe të lutem shpjegoja pak për burrneshtë. Çfarë është burrneshtë?
Burrnesha është që kur ti e vendos, unë kam vendosur më bë burrneshtë në moshën 23 vjeç, 23 vjeç. Edhe se diftova përpara se ishim edhe shumë të varfën, edhe vetëm blidha familjen. Edhe ju thash se unë do të rrinë të bëjmë burrneshtë, do të ndihmoj ju. Edhe nona nuk ishte dakord për me kanë vetë burrneshtë. Thotë pse don ti me naj burrnesh, duhet me kriju familjen, anë unë e venosa, tonë kënë dakord për veçnans. Nona nuk je fort dakord. Adin për me bë burrnesh duhet me kushtu vetëm familjes, me punua, adin si tëmë me majtë traditat, me majtë gjonat, si nuk du, adin kur ti bësh burrnesh, ashtë si puna e fritni, si e venos, si më bë frata, nuk mundesh as për martua, as për gjë, me punua, se ata i kushtuan zotit na, i kushtuan në familjes. Edhe unë jam kushtu atyne, ata tash vllazët edhe motra, çat do me pas vetë në gjë mogot, ata i përgjigjen për mua, ashtu si jam përgjigj vetë atyne përpara. Sa është gjë shmushme, se respekton gjithkush. Edhe kur jeti burrnesh qysh e vogël, se s'di e pa kupton qysh e vogël. Kanë njerëzit kanë shumë respekt. Njerëzit jashtë, edhin personat jashtë janë.
Sepse është një koncept vështirë për njerëz jashtë Shqipërisë për të kuptuar.
Po, dikush nuk e kupton, edhe një gjë të keqe ka Shqipënia, se nuk i vlerëson, edhin se këto burrnesha duhet me hinë diku një libra, ndeshka me kanë i titë, se janë veçanta, janë pak. Tash me thëmë se me mua nuk do të ketë ma. Unë jam ma e reja, reke shkodë, s'ma marrë mëne se ka kun. Mund të ketë duke të ketë një burrnesh e ke në laq.
Aha, në laq. Akoma?
Po, akoma. Edhe një e ke në lejsh.
Aha, është interesant, kam në shtëpi një lejsh.
Një e ke në lejsh, a ka dorën e shkurtume. Edhe këti mundesh me hinë Google, edhe me hinë YouTube, mundesh me gjetë, edhe me gjetë.
Sa vjeç është?
Ajo mund të jetë, për vjetë nuk e di mirë, po është pak me vjetër. Ajo mund të jetë një 74-5 mund të jetë. Kurse një ndurës ka vdek par vjetë ka vdek, lali, se a ke një gjua, ka një ndurës ka vdek. Ajo kanë kanë shumë inteligjente, shumë e mëshme. Në vite, dhe e kam dash shumë edhe për berë vite këtu. Bile me ka falë një, ashtu me ka ba një piktura, jo vetë me ka godit me të guskat e detit. Se ka jetua në Durrës, ka s'ke shka vdek, nuk ashtu. Ka jetua vetër, ka vdek.
Po tani ti jeton në New York?
Po, unë tash...
Se ik në Amerikë?
Jo, unë iki me vizë, kam marrë vizë se kam familja atje. Shkoj se ashtë edhe, qire, unë gjithmonë jam kushtu aty në familjes, po adin vetën, ti me naj 2-3 ditë vetën një heshe, adin, nuk ka jetë vetën. Ata na unë shkoj me takua familjen, po nuk shkoj me naj, se unë jam shumë adhëtore.
Është vështirë për ju për kra burrneshe?
Po, ashtë i fje e vështirë, adin, i fje vështirë se adin du gjithmonë ti mu përgjigj veç për familje, adin me punua veç për familje, du se e ke venos, po tash ka arë kohë, adin ashtë liri, adin ke liri fjallet, ke liri me dal, ke liri me ka dush me shku, se dikur nuk ke mujt, adin gratë nuk kanë, përpara nuk kanë mujt me ik, nuk kanë mujt me dal, adin me pi me kafe, me hini ose me shku një ose rante, se nuk kanë, ata nuk kanë shumë vështirë, adin gratë janë kanë me shami, adin rrugë, si thonë kështë me vonë krye, me funa, e vonë ka shumë, bëshë këto gratë e fshatet janë kanë vetëm më shumë me punua mrenë, me bani, shto me punua, jo, kurse kur je burrneshe, je ma lirë, mund është me dalë, mund është me shkua, nuk vesh kur, nuk ven kur, adin e plet flokë kurtën, e nuk mund është kur me, adin je si trim, adin, bara.
Më falë për pyte, po ka të shëron për familje, apo më falë për pyte,
jo, nuk ka gjanë, kam kuptua mirë. Nuk është e vështirë kur ti e venos, se nuk ta ka imponua kur adin mu ba me zart, e ke venos ti adin. Kur ti e venos, bifjala me lexu një këtë libër, ke venos ti nuk ka të ta ba kush me thonë as burri, as vajza. E vështirë tash për mua se janë familje lërkë, edin. Edhe vllavi, se njëri vllav më ka vdek për 10 vjeç, edhe për fëmijë, edin.
Është ty, është
për mua është vështirë, edin, se i kam lërkë. Megjithëse unë flas në telefon, po adin ata 2 fëmija se ka, vllav ka një vajzë, një djalë. Kurse vllasim ka dek, ka një djalë e libër, flasim telefon, po kur nuk i ke, kur je afër, edin me hagër bashkë buke, me bani muhabet, me dalë me ecë pak me ta, është shtirë, edin, për mua, tash një shtirë.
That's all for this week. You can follow Inside Albania every Saturday on Euronews Albania, on our YouTube channel, Euronews Albania, or across all major podcasting platforms. You can also follow me, reach out to me, let me know of stories and ideas you might have. Alice in Albania on X, on TikTok, and on Instagram. Until next week, Mira Pavsim.